what a man could find if he was to reflect on his life is that he is more like a wolf that has been domesticated than a wolf that lives in the wild. To go even further, he could think about how he has a tendency to be passive, feel low, be a people pleaser, and finds it hard to stand his ground. He could see that he has been this way for as long as he can remember, and could believe that he was simply born this way. Naturally, living in this way is not going to allow him to live a fulfilling life. If he was to think about the people who are in his life, he could see that he often does what they want and that he rarely asserts himself. This can mean that he will carry a fair amount of anger and resentment. At times, he might be humiliated by some of the people in his life and seen as someone who doesn't have a problem with being put down. If this does often happen, he could just suck it up and not create the impression that he has an issue with what is going on. If he is in an intimate relationship, he could be with someone who doesn't truly respect or value him. As with his friends and perhaps his family, he could often be put down and treated like he's an idiot. Once again, he could largely tolerate what is going on and not make it clear that this behaviour is not acceptable. Or, if he ever does stand up for himself, he could lose it and then go back to how he was before. When he is at work, he could also be walked over by a number of people and not be respected. But, as with the other areas of his life, he can just put up with it and not make it clear that this kind of behaviour is not acceptable. He could also be ready to go to the next level and be promoted, but he might not have the belief or the drive that he needs to be able to take the next step. Or, if he has been able to move upwards, he might not truly believe that he deserves to be there and could often be filled with doubt. At this point, assuming that he has been able to step back and reflect on his life, he could be well and truly fed up with the life that he leads. It will be as though he is just making up the numbers. He could notice that deep inside him a need is growing for him to be able to grab life by the horns and to start pulling up trees, so to speak. Yet, due to this, he will need to gradually let go of the version of himself that is not empowered and embrace a version of himself that is. Even if he does believe that he was simply born this way, there is a strong chance that there is far more to it. For him to start to understand why he is this way, it will probably be a good idea for him to take a closer look at what took place during his formative years. This might have been a stage of his life that was anything but nurturing, with him being undermined by both of his parents. His mother might have had more in common with a tyrant than someone who was a source of nurturance, and his father might have had more in common with a doormat than someone who was a source of strength. So, like the shadow of the night sky over the land below, he might have felt smothered, trapped and undermined by his mother. This was then someone who didn't provide him with the love and support that he needed. It was someone who deprived him of what he needed. Along with this, she might have rewarded him for doing what she wanted, not getting angry and staying in the background, and punished him for doing the opposite. Ultimately, she would have ended up with a boy, but what she probably wanted was a girl. As for his father, he might have often been used by his mother to snuff out any signs of individuality, defiance, or masculinity that he expressed. Therefore, if he ever didn't want to do something or expressed anger or himself, he might have been disciplined by his father. In this case, both of his parents will have worked together to stop their son from developing into an individual who was in his power. Most likely, his father had already been stripped of his power long before he even met his mother. It can seem strange as to why a mother would undermine her son in this way and end up with a man who is also estranged from his power. In all likelihood, his mother grew up with an abusive father or mother or another family member who was abusive. Either way, she would have unconsciously feared that if she didn't undermine her son, he would end up growing into someone who would tyrannize her in the same way that she was tyrannized. Thus, her motivation was not actually to undermine her son, it was to stop herself from coming into contact with the tyrant who lived inside her and would have ended up being projected into her son. The man that she ended up with, the man's father, would have been a man that she unconsciously chose because he wouldn't threaten her. She may then have complained that he lacked backbone and wouldn't stand up for himself, but another, bigger part of her would have felt comfortable with how he behaved. If he was a man who was in his power, she wouldn't have been attracted to him. Instead, she would have been repelled by him. It could be said that the man reminded her of how she felt throughout her childhood years, and so when she was criticizing him, she was really criticizing the part of herself that felt totally helpless. Now, thanks to what he went through throughout this stage of his life, he is unlikely to have access to a great deal of his consciousness. He is likely to live on the surface of himself and be in a deeply repressed state. For him to become more integrated and connected to his feelings and instincts, he is likely to have a lot of pain to work through. This is something that will take courage and patience and persistence. Perhaps when you were younger, you were emasculated by both of your parents or just your mother, but as you can see, this will be the result of one or both of your parents being in a very bad way themselves. Most likely they were mistreated during their early years, they were greatly undermined, and as they didn't deal with their wounds for whatever reason, one or both of them ended up undermining you and stripping you of your power. And so now you will live on the surface of yourself and be out of touch with your body, so your feelings and instincts, and for you to reclaim your power to be a whole integrated human being, then most likely it will be essential for you to work through the pain that is held in your brain and body, and as you do this, you will gradually reconnect to your power and you will be able to truly embrace life, because you are not here just to make up the numbers, you are here to live a fulfilling life. So please don't suffer in silence and do what you need to do to gradually change your life. If you would like to find out more about the services that I offer, please go to www.oliverjrcooper.co.uk or email me at info@oliverjrcooper.co.uk, and I'm looking forward to assisting you on your journey.